So you try it tonight. Try it with anything in this world. The unmarried, if you desire to be married, what symbol in the world would imply that you are married? A little band in this Western world, a little band around this finger. Not around any other finger, around this finger. It doesn't have to be the biggest aspidastra in the world. Just a plain little gold ring. If you wore it there, it would imply you're married. Sleep tonight as though you wore one. Don't put your physical thumb on it. Put your imaginary thumb on it. And feel it in your imagination. You can do it. Feel a ball. Can you feel it? Then feel a piece of silk. Feel this, one after the other. Can you discriminate between all these different sensations? If you can discriminate between this and a tennis ball and a baseball and a piece of silk, then you can't discriminate between nothings. They must exist, though unseen by your eyes, they still must exist. So if I can discriminate between these unseen objects, these objects, though unseen, must be real. Well, now take that and put it there. But feel when you wear it that you are proud of the one who put it there. You don't have to see what he looks like. When it's put there, you'll be proud of his name, to bear it, and you'll be proud of him. Just put it there. You know why I know that? My wife did it. She did it. Actually, she did it. One day she was in the presence of a so-called sensitive. And this one said to her, "Why did you take off your wedding ring?" She said, "I am not married." "Oh," she said, "don't fool me. You took off your wedding ring." She said, "But I'm not married." She said, "I'll even tell you his name." And she started off with never. She didn't quite get it, but she was coming very, very close to it. She was actually sensing what my wife in consciousness was feeling. When I first met her, I wanted her the very first day I knew her. I wanted to marry her. But I was entangled. Was I entangled? But by this law, I disentangled myself. Without hurting anyone, I disengaged myself from all these complexities so that I could actually legitimately say, "Will you marry me?" But in the meanwhile, she was wearing the ring. I hadn't yet put it there, but she allowed me to put it there and slept as though I had put it there. So I tell you, unmarried ladies, if you desire to be married, maybe you don't. If you do, that's the way to do it. And it'll come out of the nowhere. You don't have to go and buy anyone or try to meet the right people. Usually when you try to meet the right one, he's always the wrong one. So don't go searching. Those who go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness. And the loveless never find love. Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. So you fall in love, you don't have to seek for it. You draw them. They come to you. So here, this is the power of which I speak. The power of the universe, the power that created and sustains the universe, is resident in you as your own wonderful human imagination. That's God. Don't forget it. I know it's difficult when man has been trained to believe in an external God. And he goes to church and gets on his knees and he prays to an external God. And he goes home at night, maybe he does say his prayers, and he gets down on his knees and he prays to an external God. All right, maybe that's a nice thing for someone to do. But I tell you, he isn't out there at all. You won't be criticized for it, but he is within you. Very personal, may I tell you. He is very, very personal. And within you. When you're told in Scripture, of the rock that begot us, we are unmindful. And that seems to be all a figure of speech on how true that thing is. One night, sitting in the silence, rather it was an afternoon, I was thinking of nothing in particular, and suddenly before my eyes came this quartz, an enormous quartz. As I looked at it, it fragmented itself, broke into numberless little pieces, and then it reassembled itself. As it reassembled itself, it was not into a quartz, but into a man, seated in the lotus posture. I'm looking at this man, all seated now, perfect man. As I looked at him, I'm looking at myself. Here I am, the perceiver, observing myself, seated in the lotus posture, this deep, deep meditation. And as I became aware that I'm looking at myself, it began to glow. And it glowed and glowed and glowed. When it reached the intensity of luminosity, it exploded. And then I returned to this level. Where did I see him? Within me. That being is meditating this. This is but a projection of itself in the world. And when he wakes within me, completely wakes, I am he. God actually became me, that I may become God. And he's put me through all the paces, allowing me to make all the mistakes, to make a monster like the thing that I talked about earlier. I made that, and I made a lovely one. And he allows it in his meditation. He is the dreamer in me. And he's dreaming this, and dreaming everything that I dream in this world. And when he awakes, this will cease to be, and I am he. And he is God. So I tell you, go out and try it. Begin tonight. I make you this promise: if you try it faithfully, you will not fail. Now tonight, you need not confine it to yourself. Take a friend, without the friend's consent, without the friend's knowledge, and lift him up. Do you know of a friend who is unemployed? Well, then see him gainfully employed. And don't tell him that you may brag tomorrow. Don't boast. Just see him gainfully employed. Here's a friend of mine in L.A., and this man was unmercifully bawled out by his superiors and told that he was no earthly good, and they are considering letting him go. They're going to fire him. Well, the man had no support outside of the job, and he had a family. So he told my friend, well, my friend lives by this law. So he said to him, all right, go your way. Didn't tell him what he was going to do. He sat quietly at his desk and heard the man tell him that they praised him beyond measure for something that he had done. It wasn't 48 hours that the complete reversal of their attitude towards this man in their praise of something he did in the advertising world. But the blow had left its mark. And he said to my friend, yes, they've reversed it, but I don't feel easy on the job. Because they could not have said the unlovely things that they said and forgotten them. So it will come back, and I'm going to quit. I have no money. I'm giving them 2 weeks' notice. But I'm going to ask them to give me 1 week of the 2, that I may get myself together, maybe take off a few days, and just get my thoughts in order. Well, at the end of 2 weeks, he didn't have a job. My friend, when he told him what he was going to do, my friend knew he could not afford to quit and not work. So he saw him gainfully employed and earning 25% more than the present job. He took off the second week. When he came back at the end of the first week, he came into my friend's office and said, only yesterday I got the offer and I start Monday. I do not lose 1 day's salary, and I start at 25% more than I received on the past job. What did it? My friend's imagination. A loving use of the imagination on behalf of a friend. Had he gone without that imaginal state, he'd have walked into the place, and the man would have said, we have nothing. Or we can't use you. Why are you quitting? He didn't ask anything. He simply wanted the man. So if you precede your visit by an imaginal act, they will see you as you see yourself. If you walk in knowing that you're no good, they're going to see you exactly that way. But if you're walking in the assumption that things are as you desire them to be, they're going to see you that way. And this is life.
And then the New York Times complained that they had so many more sales. And all the advertisers who advertised in that paper for Monday just simply had a blank, because they aren't reading anything but their own little section. And it was all prearranged by the editor. That I know from experience, from my same Jack Butler. When they made a mistake in one of my ads once, he went down to investigate. So he went to the editor of the religious section. And she said he had to do something to pacify him. And she said, how would you like to see the editorial staff of the social section of our paper? Well, Jack was always up for fun. He said, I would love it. And it was just about 2 months before Easter. And all these ladies and their daughters were all around the place, dozens and dozens of them. waiting to be interviewed. Each is going to say exactly what we're going to wear. That's been ordered. The dress is all ordered and maybe already delivered. And the kind of a hat and what church we attend and where we're going to come out. And the cameras will be there to photograph it. And the morning service will carry as spontaneous. All spontaneous. And that's the dream world. A man just retired after very successful 30 years in the show business. His name is Sinatra. I recall this vividly when he was a young boy. I came out of my tailor on 48th Street, which was between 5th and Madison Avenue. I'm walking towards 5th, and when I got to 5th, here is 3 dozen young girls, 16, 17. And here is a cab, right in the middle of 5th Avenue, and here is this young lad. Well, he's 10 years my junior, so he was then, well, whatever it was then, when he got started. His foot on the runway, the cab stalled, traffic backed up, all the horns are honking, the cop is inquiring, and he is signing autographs to these 30 or more. All that was prearranged to block the traffic. So what? They'll give him a ticket. They give the cabbie a ticket. And he'll pay. It'll cost him what? $50, $100? But the publicity, all that was part of the motion. He kept that going until now. And people think, what a big, wonderful man. That has been promoted from the time that he began to breathe as a young lad, as a singer. And it goes all through our entire dream world. And how do you go? Don't stop it. You can't stop it. It's part of the dream world. I am not telling you of the dream world. I am telling you of the world wherein you will awake. And when you awake, you'll be clothed in your immortal body. And that is heaven. Heaven is not a realm. It's not an area. Wherever you are clothed in your glorified body is heaven, because nothing remains imperfect in your presence. If you walk through the petrified forest, it would all burst into foliage. If you walk in the desert would blossom. Everything would become beautiful. And things long dead, or not even visible, will suddenly appear because you walk by. So wherever you go, clothed in your glorified body, which comes with your resurrection, makes every place that you go perfect. For wherever you are, things must be perfect. That's what we are celebrating this week. But they aren't telling it that way. They're telling of a little man who died a horrible death 2,000 years ago. And then they took him down from the tree and then put him in a tomb. But God raised him from the dead. You are the one spoken of, and you are still hanging on that tree in a way, for you are nailed upon this body. And the nails are vortices. 6 vortices. A vortex, a vortex, a vortex, a vortex, and both feet. And they are whirling vortices that nailed you here. And may I tell you from my own experience, it was sheer ecstasy. It wasn't painful. There was no pain whatsoever. Sheer ecstasy. And then oblivion. And that oblivion was a complete forgetfulness of the being that you are. And you are buried in your skull. And in that skull you dream the dream of life, as you're dreaming it now. And because it is a dream, if you know it's a dream, you can dream anything it to be. If you know it's a dream. You can control the dream. So what would the feeling be like if it were true? Well, you name what it is you would like to be true. And naming it, you dream it just as though it were true. Remain faithful to your assumption. And that assumption of yours, though, at the moment, appears to be false and denied by your senses, if you persist in it, it will harden into fact. This is the story, and I am telling you what I know that I have experienced. I have experienced the Lord bringing things into being that I dare to assume because I wanted them to be brought into being. And the other, which is the fulfillment of God's promise. For I was that Abraham, so are you. And we were shown the gospel beforehand. We were given a preview of it. And we were told, you will go into a world that is not yours. And there you will be enslaved, and there you will be injured, and there you will be maltreated. But after 400 years, you will come out. Now, the 400 is not 400 as you measure time. 400 is simply a symbolical number of a cross. It is the numerical number of the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is the Toph. And Toph has the symbol of a cross. And this is the cross. So as long as I bear this, I am in the world of the furnaces. But I will come out of it. I will awaken within it, come out of it. And one day, soon after I awaken within it and come out of it, I will shed it. And shedding it, I will go back to the glory that was mine before that the world was. But enhanced by reason of wearing the cross in this world. Because no one can consummate this bliss that we saw before the world was, unless he is generated here in this world in flesh and blood. So I come down and I find myself wearing a garment woven in the womb of a woman. And I put on that garment and I'm nailed on it. And then I'm buried in that garment, but buried in the skull. And because I'm buried in the skull, I come out of the skull. And when I come out of that skull, still wearing the garment, for a little interval of time to tell and share it with my brothers, to encourage them to continue, no matter what happens, to continue. Dream nobly and realize the dreams. But dream nobly, because in the not distant future, you're going to awaken. And when you awaken, you're going to take off the little garment. And that is the cross that you wore for your journey, which is called in Scripture the 400 years. Really, it's thousands of years. You've been wearing it for thousands of years. For there is no death, really, only restoration.
Now here is a practical technique. The first thing you do, you must know exactly what you want in this world. When you know exactly what you want, make as lifelike a representation as possible of what you would see and what you would touch and what you would do and physically moving in such a state. For example, suppose I wanted a home, but I had no money, but I still know what I want. I, without taking anything into consideration, I would make as lifelike a representation of the home that I would like, with all the things in it that I would want. And then, this night, as I would go to bed, I would, in a state, a drowsy, sleepy state, the state that borders upon sleep, I would imagine that I am actually in such a house, that were I to step off the bed, I would step upon the floor of that house. Were I to leave this room, I would enter the room that is adjacent to my imagined room in that house. And while I am touching the furniture and feeling it to be solidly real, and while I am moving from one room to the other in my imaginary house, I would go sound asleep in that state. And I know that in a way I could not consciously devise, I would realize my house. I have seen it work time and time again. If I wanted promotion in my business, I would ask myself what additional responsibilities would be mine were I to be given this great promotion. What would I do? What would I say? What would I see? How would I act? And then in my imagination, I would begin to see and touch and do and act as I would outwardly see and touch and act were I in that position. If I now desired the mate of my life, were I now in search of some wonderful girl or some wonderful man, what would I actually find myself doing that would imply that I have found my state? For instance, suppose now I was a lady. One thing I would definitely do, I would wear a wedding ring. I would take my imaginary hands and I would feel the ring that I would imagine to be there. And I would keep on feeling it until it seemed to me to be solidly real. I would give it all the sensory vividness I am capable of giving anything. And while I am feeling my imaginary ring, which implies I am married, I would sleep. This story is told us in the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon. It is said, "At night on my bed, I sought him whom my soul loveth. I found him whom my soul loveth, and I would not let him go, until I brought him into my mother's house, right into the chamber of her that conceived me." If I would take that beautiful poem and put it into modern English, into practical language, it would be this. While sitting in my chair, I would feel myself right into the situation of my fulfilled desire. And having felt myself into that state, I would not let it go. I would keep that mood alive, and in that mood I would sleep. That is, taking it right into my mother's chamber, into the chamber of her that conceived me. You know, people are totally unaware of this fantastic power of the imagination. But when man begins to discover this power within him, he never plays the part that he formerly played. He doesn't turn back and become just the reflective life. From here on in, he is the affector of life. The secret of it is to center your imagination in the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain therein. For in our capacity to live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled lies our capacity to live the more abundant life. Most of us are afraid to imagine ourselves as important and noble individuals, secure in our contribution to the world, just because at the very moment that we start our assumption, reason and our senses deny the truth of our assumption. We seem to be in the grip of an unconscious urge which makes us cling desperately to the world of familiar things and resist all that threatens to tear us away from our familiar and seemingly safe moorings. But I appeal to you to try it. If you try it, you will discover this great wisdom of the ancients, for they told it to us in their own strange, wonderful, symbolical form. But unfortunately, you and I misinterpreted their stories and took it for history when they intended it as instruction to simply achieve our every objective.